Hi everyone. I just wanted to say welcome to Health Promotion Planning and Evaluation. And firstly, I'm sorry that I can't be there for week one. I'm currently dealing with a bit of a family emergency and need to be with my family. I'm not sure at this stage when I'll be back, but I'm sure you'll be in good hands. You will be able to, you can email me, however, it's unlikely at this stage that I'll be able to get to any emails until probably the end of the week, maybe even early next week. So please, if you do need to get in touch with anybody about the subject, either contact Sabrina Gupta, who is the instance coordinator down in Bundoora, or have a chat to Steve Begg. I just wanted to put this little video together to hopefully just reiterate what Steve has said in class, or whoever has taken that class for you, and just to give you a little bit of context about the subject and give you some guidance about how to proceed in my absence. So what I'm going to do is we'll jump into LMS, and then I've got some PowerPoint notes that are already up on LMS. We'll have a quick look at those, and that will probably be enough to get you moving into the subject. So for most of you, this is, your final year of study. So this is a third year subject. So our expectations of you really ramp up this year. And certainly in this subject, the expectations are quite high in terms of both the quantity of work, but also the quality of work that we will be expecting of you. So I'm going to jump into LMS and just show you what the layout is and what we've done to the LMS site for you. So as you see, this is the main page for the subject. Your subject learning guide is up there. Please have a look at that if you haven't already. If you're not familiar with LMS, there's a quick guide there, but this is a third year subject, so I'm assuming that everybody gets LMS at this stage, but if not, that information is there. There is an outline of all of your assessments. So there are 3 assessments in this subject. 2 of those are group assessments, and 1 is an individual assessment. The assessments actually build upon each other. And so in your first assessment, you'll actually be working in small groups of 3, and certainly no more than 3. And you'll be working to actually conduct a community needs assessment, and then writing up a needs assessment reports in those groups. So this semester we'll be sending you out actually into the community, so away from the university population and out into the general community to actually go and conduct a focus group discussion and to identify what the needs of particular community groups are in relation to health. And then you'll do some data collection, you'll do some data analysis, and you'll write up some findings and make some recommendations based on that data that you've gathered. Your second assessment is an individual literature review. So this will be based on the themes that you identify in assessment 1. And so from that, you'll actually go and conduct a review of the literature around that particular theme. And each person in the group will have a slightly different theme based on that needs assessment. One of the things that I do want to point out with this literature review is that this is a hurdle assessment. So in order to pass the subject, you must pass the literature review. And I'll talk more about that in the coming weeks with you. Your final assessment is a program portfolio. So you'll use the information that you've collected from both the needs assessment and the literature reviews, and you'll actually be developing a program based on a particular health issue or an associated health needs. And that program will be a community development program. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when I jump into the PowerPoint, but also I'll come back to that throughout the semester just to reinforce that we are taking a community development approach in this subject. We're not looking at health education, for example. So all of your instructions and marking guides for these 3 assessments are available up on LMS. So please feel free to have a look at those. I think it's really important at this stage that you really pay attention just to assessment 1. You can't progress to assessment 2 or 3 without having completed number 1 first. And so have a look at assessment 1. There's a lot of information in terms of instructions, but also some of the ethical requirements of this subject and this particular assessment as well. And I'm hoping that Steve has gone through some of that with you. There is information in the notes for week 1 that you can refer back to, and I will point out a few things in this little presentation as well. So all of those instructions are there for you. If you are, I'll come back to that. If you are new to sort of health promotion, so if you haven't, for example, done the subjects, principles of public health practice and or community health promotion, and I think even if you have, then I would highly recommend that you do some background reading for this subject. And so I would recommend that you start off with chapters 4 and 6 of Talbot and Berender's Promoting Health. Or if you've, and so that's the 6th edition. If you've got an earlier edition, have a look at chapters 5 and 6. So this will just give you some background in terms of primary healthcare, health promotion, and where we're heading in this particular subject. You could also have a look at the International Union for Health Promotion and Education's accreditation system in relation to the competencies related around acting professionally and ethically. One of the subject intended learning outcomes for this subject is that you need to be able to demonstrate that you can work ethically. It's a major focus in this particular subject, and we also have ethics approval for you to actually undertake this subject, and that needs assessment in the community. So have a look at this background reading. As I said, this subject does have ethics approval from the She College Ethics Subcommittee. So it is critical that you are all acting in accordance with the procedures that are outlined to and that have been approved by that particular committee. You must familiarise yourselves with the ethical requirements for this subject. And the other thing to note is that attendance in week 3 is compulsory. So anybody who is not in class in week 3 will need to provide either a medical certificate or a stat dec. And we'll need to have a conversation about how you proceed in this subject. If you can't provide a medical certificate or a stat dec, then you may not be able to continue your enrolment in this subject this year. So this is really important that you are following these ethical requirements. I would encourage you all to look at the documents that are here in preparation for your focus groups. I'll come back and I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment when I jump over to the PowerPoint. But it is important that you have a look at these particular documents here, and we'll come back to these over the next few weeks as well. There are some additional resources here in relation to ethics that you should have a look at as well. This will just help you to understand ethical principles and values and what we're looking for in terms of that ethical practice and why ethics is actually so important in relation to health promotion. So those are the main things that I want you to have a look at. For week 1, there are some materials here that you can have a look at. I'm hoping that Steve has got you to develop some learning goals for this subject. I'll be going through each of those over the coming weeks, and we'll come back to those at various points throughout the semester just to check in to see what else we might need to be doing to help you to achieve those learning goals and to see that we're on track and meeting those expectations. There is a reading list. The essential readings are all embedded in that reading list. There are notes here, and there's some workshop activities which I'm hoping that Steve or whoever has taken the class has gone through with you. We will come back to those either in week 2 and or 3 as well. All right, so what I might do is just switch over to the PowerPoint notes and just quickly go through some of these with you. So these are, you can have a look at these. I'm not going to read through all of this material. In fact, there's a lot of information in here. The thing that I do want to point out to you is firstly, the subject intended learning outcomes. As I said, one of the key learning outcomes is your ability to practice ethically and to meet all of the requirements that have been set out by and approved by the PHE College Human Ethics Subcommittee. You should be able to apply public health promotion theory to planning, implementation and evaluation in health promotion practice. And so while I know that not all of you are necessarily health promotion students, and that's fine. However, this is a core subject for those students who are undertaking that health promotion major. And therefore this subject is written for that particular major and those students. And so by the end of it, you should all, regardless of what major you're in or what other course you're in, will be able to demonstrate this theory and put that into practice. You should also be able to apply community development theory to public health promotion program planning and evaluation. If you think about some of the other subjects that you may have done, so for example, community health promotion, you know, we've looked at a variety of strategies for health promotion in that particular subject. So some of you would have done maybe some needs assessment, some of you have done a little bit of health education, some of you have done some social marketing, for example. Most of you have done health education development, the subject, and are familiar with those sort of behavioural change approaches. In this subject, we are focusing on the other end of the health promotion continuum and are looking at community development approaches. Okay, that is the whole framework for this particular subject. And then the other intended learning outcome is, where applicable, you should be able to discuss the interactions between natural, economic, social, political and cultural systems in public health promotion planning and evaluation. And that's in line with that more community development style to health promotion. In terms of the knowledge and skills that you'll be drawing upon, you've got many of the knowledge and skills that are required for this subject. So this is, you know, a capstone subject. So it's sort of an opportunity for you to bring in the knowledge and skills that you've been gaining over the past 2 years and put these, really consolidate these and put these into practice. So you'll be continuing to develop your research skills, your evidence-based, you know, planning skills. You'll be drawing on your understanding of community development principles from subjects like PHP and CHP, and of course professionalism as well. And this subject is your preparation for your field experience in semester 2. And so what this subject is not, as you can see there, it's not health education. Okay, we're not focusing on people's behaviours. We're not focusing on attitudes or knowledge. We are looking at community development. So if you're not familiar with community development, you will need to do a little bit of background reading, and I would recommend Talbot and Verinder for that. We will be doing some work around community development over the coming weeks to, you know, better prepare you for planning a community development program. But I think that you should probably all be doing a little bit of background reading beforehand. Just in terms of where this subject fits, so if you're in that public health and or health promotion major, one or both of those, you would have done probably principles of public health practice, which is that real foundation knowledge. So that introduction to, you know, determinants of health, values and principles which underpin public health. An introduction we provided you to health promotion. We've looked at things like policy. We introduced you to community development, community participation. So all of all of those fundamental knowledge and skills and values that you've learned in that subject will be carried through into this subject. You've done health education development, which is about working in groups and behaviour change. You've done CHPE, where you've worked with the Latrobe community to plan and implement a health promotion program. And so this subject is about working with broader community and using a community development approach. And all of that then feeds into your field experience in semester 2. Each week you'll have the equivalent of a lecture and some workshop, which will include links to the lecture and your homework. So there will be some homework sort of each week for you to be working through. There will be homework that is linked to the week's workshop themes, and you are expected to be doing about 8 to 10 hours on top of your contact hours. So we have 3 contact hours a week, and you should be doing another 8 to 10 on top of that. I think, I can't stress to you just how busy you are going to be in this subject. You're going to be organising and conducting a focus group, and you're going to be organising that. I'm not doing that. That's part of the knowledge and skills that you need to build. And I don't think that you should underestimate how long that is going to take you. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but you are going to be busy in this subject, and you need to really stay on top of things and to plan your semester wisely. Because we'll be running this subject in a 3-hour block, I just want you to be aware that we won't always be starting with a lecture, that I'm going to vary things up from week to week. So some weeks we might start with a lecture, other weeks we might start with a workshop, some weeks we might begin with some preparation for assessments. Because it's 3 hours, that gives us a lot of flexibility, and I'm happy to sort of rearrange things to suit your needs really, and work out what's best for you guys and where you're up to and what you need. So just be mindful that don't assume that the first hour is going to be a lecture and therefore you don't need to turn up. You do need to turn up. It is fun, really critical that you do, and it is part of that ethical practice and the requirements that we've set out to the ethics committee. There's some stuff there around expectations which you can have a read through. Just to position this subject, so you'll be familiar with this model or framework for the determinants of health. In this subject, we are interested in this side of this model. We are looking at, the broader features of society, environmental factors. We're going to be looking at socioeconomic characteristics, and a little bit around perhaps knowledge, attitudes and beliefs. What we're not going to be looking at are health behaviours or lifestyle behaviours, nor are we going to be looking at any of the biomedical factors. This is not what we do in community development. We're going to be working up here, and you're going to be exploring with community what is going on in this area here for them in relation to health. As I said, with the continuum of health promotion, we are working down this end, these socio-environmental approaches to health promotion, okay? We're using community development approaches. We're going to be looking at social and environmental change. You'll be designing a program in your third assessment which, brings about some sort of social or environmental change, or it might be in terms of developing some policy, or the creation of health promotion settings and supportive environments. We're not going to be doing any of this in this subject. You've done this in your other subjects. This is just really the framework for this subject and the framework that I'll be guiding you through. And so this is really that planned approach to health promotion. And so you'll be doing some planning in terms of going out and, identifying needs and assets within a community, using that to then go and look at what the literature is saying, to be able to identify what the needs are. You'll be using those needs to inform the design of a community development program. So you'll be writing some aims and objectives. You'll be identifying some strategies. You'll be developing an implementation plan. So you won't actually be going out and implementing this program, but you will need to think through implementation and what is actually required to actually implement what you have designed. And then you'll also be developing an evaluation plan where you'll be measuring impact, process and outcome evaluation. And so for some of you, those will be new terms, and we'll talk more about those a bit later on in the semester as we move towards that third assessment. But this is the cycle that you'll be working through and that your assessments will take you through as well. As I said, the assessments are up on LMS. Please have a read of those. I will go through those in a lot more detail with you over the coming weeks. And as I said, I think at this stage, just focus really on assessment 1. You can't do assessment 2 until you have done assessment 1, and you can't do assessment 3 until you have completed assessments 1 and 2. So at this point, really focus on assessment 1. By all means, have a look at the others, but you certainly can't jump ahead at this stage. Just quickly, in terms of working ethically, there's some background information in here that I'm not going to go through. You can certainly have a read of this, but we know that health promotion is an ethical and principled discipline. In fact, ethics is fundamental to the work that we do, and those ethical values are really important. And so, I want you to just be mindful of that as you're working through this subject. And if you're unsure about what I'm talking about, then I would suggest that you have a look at the RUHP accreditation system and have a look at the knowledge and skills that are required in terms of ethical practice, and also do some of that pre-reading from Talbot and Verinder as well. In terms of the ethics and your projects that you'll be working on, as I've mentioned, we do have ethics approval for you to go out into communities to conduct the needs assessment. And with that comes certain responsibilities that you need to adhere to. There are a number of important documents that you need to be familiar with. There are the guidelines for the project, which are outlined in assessment 1. There are recruitment guidelines, there is a participant information statement, and there is a participant consent form. Please have a read of these. These are, I cannot stress how important these documents are, that you are aware, because if you do not act in accordance to those, then both you and myself could end up in quite serious trouble. Okay, so I can't stress to you just how important this is. I will be meeting with all of the groups before you conduct your focus group to ensure that your plan meets the ethical standards that have been approved by that committee. So at this point, nobody is to make any contact with any community groups. Nobody is to go off and do their focus group. Nobody can actually go and do their focus group until after that compulsory class in week 3. So in week 3, we take you through a focus group, what that is, what it looks like, how you're to conduct that based on what's been approved by ethics. And so that class ensures that you are appropriately prepared to go out into the community to then go and do your focus group. So just to reiterate, nobody at this point is to make any contact with any community groups, and by no means are you to conduct your focus group. Okay, so that's really important that you do adhere to that. There's some value stuff there, which for those of you who have just completed the summer subject with me, we've talked a lot about those. If these are new to you, go and have a look at some of those readings that are up on LMS. There's some ethical considerations in relation to these, but I'll come back and talk about these in a couple of weeks with you as we head in towards you actually going out and doing your focus group. So we'll come back to these. You will be seeking informed consent from everybody who participates in your focus group. And so that's why I say you need to go and have a look at that consent form. And I will talk more through that with you in the next week or two. Same in terms of the privacy. And as I say, you cannot start your data collection. So that means you cannot make contact with a group or conduct that focus group until you have got my approval, because I need to be sure that what you're doing follows what has been approved by that La Trobe committee. I'll come back to some of this stuff just to just highlight just the seriousness of what we're working with in this subject. I just want to alert you to the notion of research and misconduct. So you will be working as researchers in this subject. And so a complaint or allegation relates to research misconduct if it involves all of the following: that there's been an alleged breach of the code, that there is intent and deliberation, recklessness or gross and persistent negligence, serious consequences such as false information on the public record or adverse effects on research participants, animals, or the environment. Research misconduct includes things such as the fabrication, falsification, plagiarism, or deception in proposing, carrying out, or reporting the results of the research, and failure to declare or manage a serious conflict of interest. It includes avoidable failure to follow research proposals as approved by a research ethics committee, particularly where this failure may result in unreasonable risk or harm to humans, animals, or the environment. It also includes the willful concealment or facilitation of research misconduct by others. So we had an incident a number of years ago where there was some whispers amongst the student group that some students were not going to actually conduct the focus group, and instead were actually going to make up some results and pretend that they had actually done that. If you consider that, and if you look back at this statement around what is research misconduct, then making up some results from a pretend focus group, which meant that these students would have had to have had, falsely signed information, consent forms, falsified a recording, an audio recording, because one of the things you will be doing is actually recording your focus group, and we need to submit that. Then that is research and misconduct. And there are serious penalties for research and misconduct, including one, potentially failing, on the lower end, failing the subject, and on the more serious end, being expelled from the university. Okay, so this is very, very serious. I don't expect that this will be an issue, but I just want to make you aware of it, so that you know what the expectations are. I will talk in more detail about the ethics when I am back on deck, but please have a look at the information that is up there. Please read through all of those ethics forms that are required, and as I say, I'll talk more about that when I am hopefully back on deck. As I say, I'm not quite sure when that will be. It certainly won't be week 1. I'm not sure about week 2 at this stage. Things are very uncertain in my world at the moment. If you do read through that information and you've got any questions, please write them down. You can either email them to me, and that'll give me time to have a look, hopefully have a look at them before our next class. And it will also write them down and bring them along to class, and I can address all of those with you then. I have also included some notes around program planning. I'm not going to go through these in this recording. You can have a read through of those, but this just articulates why we need to plan for health promotion, what's involved, so some of the philosophical underpinnings of planning. There's a little bit in there around, you know, the primary healthcare approach. So if you're unfamiliar with that or don't know what I'm talking about, go and do that background reading from Talbot and Verinder. There is a little bit in the notes too around needs and assets. Have a read through that. I'm going to put up some other notes which are in relation to week 2, where there'll be a greater focus on needs assessments and what they are and why we do them, and also how we do them, as well as some of the theory which underpins those. So I'll pop those up for you so that you've got that information. And then the other set of notes that I've included for week 1 relates to some theory, and in particular a model called Precede. Don't get too caught up in that at the moment. Have a read through the notes. I'll talk more about that in the coming weeks. That's a framework that you might want to use in this subject. It can help you in terms of developing questions for your focus group, also structuring that first assessment, your needs assessment report, and also informing the development of your third assessment, which is the actual program. But at this stage, just have a read through those. You know, if you've got any questions, write them down, bring them to class, and we can have a chat about them there. I think that's all I kind of wanted to go through at this point with you. I know that this is not an ideal start to the semester, but it's a bit unavoidable at the moment. Just in terms of getting yourselves organised for the remainder of the assessment, I'm hoping that Steve has given you the team contracts. Please note at this stage that none of the teams are finalised. I'll check in with you when I'm back on deck, and we can really finalise that when I am back. As I say, you should be in groups of 3, and that will become a bit clearer as to why in the next week or 2. I don't want groups of 4. 4 is going to be way too many. 2 is not ideal because it will be an extraordinary amount of work for 2. But I'm not quite sure what the enrolment numbers for the subject are looking like. So we may have to be a little bit flexible and maybe just play around with the groups when I am back on deck. But you can, in the meantime, still complete those team contracts because we can review that once the groups are finalised. And the other thing that you should do is to complete that Gantt chart or the semester study plan. And so that outlines all of the tasks that need to be completed. So that's on LMS. That outlines all of the tasks that need to be completed for the focus group. And so you should think about, and they're pretty much in order of what needs to happen and, you know, to complete successfully, plan and complete that. Remember that you can't do your focus group until after week 3. So when you're looking at, you know, conducting the focus group, that needs to be either later in week 3, week 4, or no later than week 5, really. So just block out where you think at this stage you might be doing those particular tasks, and make a note of who is going to be responsible in your team for some of those things, because for some of those it might be down to individuals, and for some of them it might be that the whole group needs to be involved. So just make a note. This will of course be rough at this point. We can come back and review that when I'm back in class. And the other thing that you might want to add to that study plan are these key dates. So making a note of when your assessments are due, paying attention to that ethics class in week 3, where I'll go through focus groups in a lot more detail with you, and also paying attention to when the holidays and that as well, because you'll need to work around all of that in this subject. You might also want to include assessments from your other subjects and when they are due. so that you know and can work around those, particularly if you're in groups and your groups consist of students you know, from different majors or even perhaps different courses as well. I think that's really all for this at this stage. I would like each team to keep some minutes, make an agenda and take minutes at each of their team meetings, both in and any meetings that they have external to class. There is some templates on LMS for you to use. You'll see them under assessment 1 with the project management templates. That is really good practice and preparation for field experience, and a skill that you will probably all need at some point in your careers. At this point in your groups, you can start to brainstorm some ideas about some community groups who you might like to involve in your needs or assets assessment. So you'll be doing just one focus group, but you might need to have a few potential groups up your sleeves in case, you know, the first idea doesn't come to fruition, which sometimes often happens. So think about groups that you're connected to. You'll be doing your focus groups with people who are well. So you can't do focus groups with anybody or any group that meets for a health issue, an existing health issue. So for example, no cancer support groups or diabetes support groups. And you can't do your focus group with people under the age of 18. The other group that you can't do your focus group with is university students. So you can't do a focus group that is entirely made up of university students, for example, students living on residence or first year students. You need to move off campus, all right? So think about community groups that you might be connected to through your paid employment, through volunteer work, through sporting or recreational activities that you participate in. Some of the groups in the past have done focus groups with, you know, choirs, book clubs. We had one group who did a focus group with people who worked in fast food restaurants. We've had volunteer groups. We've had, for example, SES volunteers. We've had a focus group with sporting clubs, sporting groups. So players of, you know, a netball group, or I think we even had, you know, a football group. So think about the groups that you're already connected to. And if you don't feel like you're connected to any groups, then, you know, think about perhaps your parents or siblings and groups that they may be connected with. So at this point, I just want you to brainstorm some ideas. Have a think about who you might do this focus group with. As I said, do not make contact with anybody, and certainly do not go and conduct a focus group, because at this point, you have no idea what you're doing, okay? I'll bring you up to speed on all of that in the coming weeks. A bit of homework. Look at assessment 1, look over that participant information sheet and consent form, so that the ethics material on LMS. Think about those community groups, and there's some questions there for you to consider as well. And that background reading for the Talbot and Verinder. There's some additional reading for homework. So have a look at pages 143 to 173 of Talbot and Verinder. And in particular, have a look at Insight 4.1, and hopefully we'll be able to have some chats about that in week 2. I'm hoping I'll be back. I'm just not sure at this stage. If you've got any questions, I say, please email me, although I can't guarantee that I can get to it until probably the end of the week, and possibly even early next week. And say, I'm so sorry that I'm not there. I really want to be. It's just not possible at this stage. I hope you have a great week. I know that's a lot to take in, but you can go back and re-listen and re-watch this recording at any time. I'll keep it up on LMS for you. So that's all from me. I will see you all when I am back, whatever that might be. Bye.